Hey, everybody, and welcome to another installment, the 40th installment, actually, of the Sports Blitz. That's right, we have made it to 40 episodes, folks. Who can believe it? It only took us like 3 years to get to 40 episodes, but we are here now. As always, I'm Robbie, joined by Doug. Doug, how are you?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty well. We're still in sequestered land here.
Yes.
Under 40 feet of rock, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
As long as we could do this show,
It's
we're good.
fine. Everything is fine. Everything is
Right.
fine. It's
Everything is
all good.
fine.
Everything is
Everything is good.
awesome. Yeah, it's all good.
Everything is good.
Yes. So, given that it is our 40th episode, we kind of wanted to take, usually if you've watched or listened to the show before, we really sort of focus on, pro sports or, Boston based sports, things like that a lot. Maybe even, sort of throwing some personal sports, pro sports related opinions in as well. But what we wanted to do tonight, since it is sort of a special episode, is we kind of wanted to really give it a personal feel, especially and how fitting is that it's on a Throwback Thursday. Because Doug and I both had the pleasure of being campers, CITs, and counselors at the glorious now no longer existent Rivers Day Camp.
Defunct.
Defunct, yes. Rivers Day Camp in Weston, Massachusetts. And certainly have a lot of, I don't think that's how you spell defunct, but I think it's DEFUNCT, but that's okay. Maybe, I don't know.
But I like the funk.
Yeah, by the way, again, if you haven't watched our last few episodes, you haven't yet heard that Doug and I have this chat going. That is so if we start saying random things or just go off on a tangent,
It's from the chat.
Yeah, it's from the chat. But anyway, so we've had some great memories over our time at Rivers, and some of that includes sports memories as well. So we kind of want to sort of tie in, some amount of sports talk from our camp days, as well as other stories and personal moments. Again, just to sort of celebrate 40 episodes on the air of the Sports Blitz. And so before the first thing, Doug, that I kind of wanted to touch on here is just sort of giving both of our sort of history and background at the camp, just sort of when we both started, sort of our progression through the various levels of the camp hierarchy, so to speak, whatever you want to call it. So, I'll sort of throw it over to you and just sort of take us through your time and your history at a good old Rivers Day Camp.
Oh yeah. Well, I started out around age 10. And started out, let's see, I'm not sure, 10 would be 1977 is when I started there. That should give you're my age.
Yeah, math.
Yeah, math would do. But I started when I was 10. I started in what they called at that time, and they kept calling it that, but sometimes the group kind of scattered a little bit as we went through the years. But it was called Upper Camp, and started there. Started as all the names of the groups were typically Indian names, and I guess they do that in a lot of the camps around, but some don't, some do. So I started out. The Upper Camp started with Crow. At this point, Crow, Seneca 1 and Seneca 2. So I started out as a Crow, and then moved my way up through Seneca 1 and Seneca 2. Then I moved to CIT. I became a CIT, CIT 1 and CIT 2. So there were 2 years, 2 summers of CIT, which taught me how to be a counselor. And then I became a counselor after that. And then became a specialist, which is somebody who goes and actually teaches some of the events. There's boating. I was in boating for a while. I was in tennis, taught tennis. I taught tennis to all the groups, junior camp all the way up. toward my last a few years there, and I was actually teaching tennis right on the court to pretty much everybody, except for the little kids that we did on the field. And let's see, was I a specialist in anything else? I don't think so. I think that's pretty much the.
Did you do? Maybe I'm completely wrong. You didn't do softball, did you? For some reason, I thought you did softball at one point.
I actually didn't do softball. I actually took over Ed, who is the Ed Schreider, who is the who's known me since I was a little kid.
He's the camp director, by the way.
He's the camp director, right? That's what I was about to say. Yeah, he's actually the camp director. He asked me to take over because the softball guy had left, and he asked me to actually take over softball. So yes, I did do softball.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was the whole summer, but it was
I just remember at some point you doing softball. I just want to make sure I wasn't completely losing my mind.
I did softball too. Yes, I did that for probably about 4 weeks while he was trying to find somebody else, and I'm not sure if he did. I think it was the last 4 weeks. Or the first 4, I'm not sure which. Anyway, it could have been in the middle too. I can't remember, but I did something. But that's really the history. So I've kind of run from the gamut of actually knowing what it's like to be a camper there, all the way through CIT, which is counselor in training. And I got some stories about that because counselor in training, when I was there, was totally different than what was just even 10 years ago, and it was just wild. And then went to the counselor portion of things, which was again really cool and very different, just kind of running a group, and then doing specialty stuff. So I've kind of done everything. The only thing I haven't done is basically Ed's job. And maybe I actually taught swim too down in the waterfront. So I taught swim. I was a lifeguard down there too, in the afternoons, and in the early evening, and lifeguard. I did some lifeguarding also down there, like during the day. Or they went on break, or I think there was a couple weeks where I did that also. So yeah, I've kind of run the gamut of everything there. But so, what about you, Robbie? What was your history like?
Yeah, so I started kind of around the same age that you did, like 9, 10 years old. I was trying to remember. I was 9 when I started in 1999. So again, do the math there, and actually, and Doug will appreciate this. My first counselor when I first started, I was in the Inca tribe, which was kind of like the upper, lower camp, sort of upper, lower, high, middle, I forget exactly, or lower, middle, I forget exactly which, was a gentleman by the name of Jimmy Navoni, who was Rivers camp lifer, and at that time was just a general counselor, and then actually kind of sort of transitioned as I went along into actually by the end being the head of boys camp for Rivers camp, and a really great guy, great sort of role model for me among other people at that camp. And it's kind of funny.
I got some stories about Jimmy too.
Yeah. It's kind of funny you bring up Ed, is because Ed, when I started, was the boys camp director, and then obviously when I started, actually the head of the camp, I'm sure, like with you, the head of the camp was a gentleman named Paul Light.
Yes.
And then he
knew Paul very well. Good guy.
Yeah, and then he turned it over to his son Mark Light, who, was there for quite a while, and then Mark retired and turned it over to Ed, who ran up until the final year there. So I kind of like with Doug, I kind of went through multiple generations, so to speak, of Rivers camp directors. But yeah, so I started when I was 9, and kind of the same thing with Doug. So I worked my way up middle camp, into upper camp where it was still, Crow, Seneca 1, Seneca 2. Went through that, became a CIT, did my 2 years as a CIT, and then became a counselor. And basically, I was an upper boys camp counselor for my entire time. I was a counselor. Some years were harder than others. So when it came to the children that I had the lovely, the that I had yeah, exactly, the lovely pleasure of counseling.
Hashtag got your ass kicked.
Yeah, I got my ass kicked.
A little bit here and there.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I had the opportunity to work and sort of go through as a camper in CIT with some great people. People that are still friends to this day, like Doug. It's kind of funny because Doug, I met Doug when he came back to camp. I know you took a little bit of a hiatus from Rivers and then came back as a counselor, and that was during the time when I was a counselor, and that's where you and I met and sort of went through several years as counselors together there. And
went into the real world and got a real job for a little while and then came back because of whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, it just was one of the, basically, I considered Rivers to be my sort of home away from home during the summer. I mean, I just, every summer since I was 9, I would go, and it was an amazing time, an amazing experience, and just formed a lot of lifelong friendships there, and met a lot of awesome people that I'm sure we'll discuss as we go along here. And being the sports guy that I am, as I know Doug can attest to as well, definitely enjoyed the sports related activities that were offered Rivers, among other activities as well. And the one interesting thing, I will say this, quick little story. I don't know if they did this back when Doug was a CIT, but when I was a CIT, one of the sort of,
I don't really know. I don't know. It was such a long time ago.
Yes, old man Doug. But when I was a CIT, one of sort of the things that we did, sort of the rites of passage, if you want to call it that, was we actually swam. So the camp, for those of you who aren't familiar, is on a pond, non-such pond. And we actually swam. So we started at the Rivers campus, and we swam all the way from the Rivers campus across the pond to what's called Camp Non-Such, appropriately enough, Non-Such Pond, and back. And so that was certainly a unique experience, and wasn't quite sure if I was going to be able to make it all the way across, but I did, and it was definitely, like I said, it was definitely an experience. I don't know, Doug, did they do something similar back when you were a CIT, or is that sort of my time thing?
No, it was definitely something we did. I think we did a little differently. I know you guys swim across. We actually, during our swimming, the CIT swimming was basically it was basic water safety. So it's kind of like advanced life, but it's more like basic water safety for kids, because during the CIT time is when you start to be with groups. And exactly, advanced life, hashtag advanced life. You start to, not only do they teach you how to be a counselor, but they also, what they do is they put you in groups with a counselor, so that counselor can train you, and you can go with the group and basically do activities with the group. So because and swim groups also. So what they tried to do is teach us basic water safety, so we would know what to do if something happened, which is really important down the waterfront. The number one thing I learned is if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen there. And sometimes it did. Um, tell you that story in a little bit, but that was before Robbie's time. But it's one of those things where we did a couple things. The first thing we did was we actually went around. We had to swim around the lake.
Wow.
Yeah, and if you saw this lake, this is not such pond. This is not a small pond.
Yeah, no,
This
no,
this
not at
thing is
all.
this
Not
thing
at
isn't
all.
like little.
No.
It's very large. It does have fish. It does have snapping turtles. It does have. I mean, some of these turtles are ginormous. We'll get to some of those stories in a little bit too. Um, and um, has weeds and muck, what we call muck, which is like this mud type, shiny, mucky, disgusting stuff that's on the bottom. So we actually had to swim around the pond just once. And of course, they followed us in boats and stuff like that. We had to do a stroke. We couldn't just do doggy paddle. We had to do a stroke, which means, front crawl or back crawl or something like that. Or we could switch. That's fine. But we had to make it all the way around. But we did go across. And actually later on, Robbie, when I came back, I did go across with my swim group. So I was able to go across, even if I didn't do it before, I was able to do it when I came back. But that's kind of what I did. But yeah, it was a little tougher when I was a CIT versus what it actually became. Camp was different when I was a counselor. When I was a camper, and when I was a CIT. It
Same.
was it was it
Same.
was it
Yeah.
was it was
Same.
totally different.
Yeah.
It's you know you could do different things and you wouldn't have to worry about ramifications. I'm
Right.
talking about like little things, like if a kid got hurt, you could go up and put your arm around him a little bit and make sure he was okay. And these days you can't touch kids. So there were so many different things. You play bombardment with the counselors, and
And
we
by the way,
got some stories about that
yeah,
too.
you play bombardment. Bombardment basically focuses like dodgeball. It's basically like
With a line.
basically is dodgeball. With maybe a couple little rule tweaks here and there. But back when Doug was a camper and a counselor, when I was a camper and starting out as a counselor, you had like the balls that we used were not like these squishy dodgeballs that you see these days, but like they were the hard, like white, like real like
Volleyballs.
true
They
hard
were the
volleyballs.
volleyballs. Yeah.
And like Doug said, like the counselors and the CITs could play with the kids. So like if you were having an issue with the kid, like you would just go ham on them. You would just no holes barred. You would just wind up and just like not in the head or anything like that, but you would just you would be taking some real body shot. That kid would be taking some real body shots. If he was giving you trouble, but Barbara was like the perfect time to just kind of like take out all your frustrations and sort of get your redemption there. And
Yeah, exactly. But again, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right, Robbie. I think that it was just very different because it was camp.
yeah,
And at camp, you had a lot of fun at camp, and you did things at camp that you may not do in the backyard, and you may not do anywhere else, and you were able to because it was easier to do. But yeah, definitely there were some different things that were done, and I have a million stories, as they say, a
oh
million
yeah,
stories in the
oh
naked
yeah.
city, but a million stories in the city, or should I say Camp Rivers. Um, there's just a million stories about stuff that we were able to do back when versus just in recent history.
Even just like little things like you were saying. I mean, even not just the rules of games and how the games were structured, but even things like, we used to be able to take like field trips. Like back when I was a camper and even like into my counselor years, we would take, like day trips every single, sometimes like every other week we would take a day trip. I remember the best one of all was at the end of each summer, we would always go, if you were like in upper camp as a camper, CIT counselor, whatever, we would go to George's Island on Boston Harbor. We would take the rivers vans, the small rivers
Crappy,
vans. Yeah,
crappy vans.
yeah, the vans to the harbor, and we would get on a boat, and we would take a boat over to George's Island. They actually would bring like boxed lunches and like all these different things with us, and we would basically go exploring like George's Island. If those of you who've never been to George's Island, they have like these caves and stuff like that you can go like walk around in, like these.
Robbie got lost for 4 days.
I really did. I really did. I actually just made it back today. Actually,
He came out of the cave just
yeah,
last night.
yeah.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Appreciate that. But even like little things, like I'll give you a perfect example that's kind of sports related. Is that when I was at CIT, we had the opportunity, yes, hashtag lost a cave. We actually had the opportunity to go to a Patriots training camp. The CITs, we got to go to Patriots training camp, and then we had like we stopped at this like brunch place or this buffet place for lunch afterwards, and all of that, and we got to go bowling. We did it also like over days and overnights, like back up until like the last couple of years, like every week would be either an overday and overnight, like, and some of these were like real good stuff. Like we went to, like Paw Sox games, mini golf, bowling, movies, roller skating, rollerblading. I remember one time for a field trip we went to like the Museum of Science, like all these different like really cool things. Unfortunately, as budgets got tighter and sort of rules got tighter, we weren't able to do as much of sort of later on in our camp experience. But yeah, it was. I mean, that was what kind of made Rivers Rivers. Is that like you just had all these sort of unique experiences that you could have during your summers there, and it definitely made it. Yeah, definitely kept myself, and I know Doug and everybody sort of coming back for summer after summer. So
Definitely, and actually, back in my day when I was a counselor, right after
back in my day,
hashtag back in my day, although you didn't write it yet, writing it now. There it is. Excellent. So basically, when I became a counselor right after being a CIT, we did a lot of overnights. The overnights were probably the most popular we had. At that time, when I started to go to camp, we probably had between 600 and 900 campers. That's a lot of campers.
Yeah.
A ton of campers. And the overnights, I think, had to be a couple hundred kids, maybe even more. So what we had to do was we had to, and we didn't do a lot of going off camp at that time. We did the regular going to a restaurant in Natick and going to the the roller skating place. We did have those, but then we had on-camp events. We had the penny candy store, which, by the way, if you've ever seen, I wish you saw this. Jim Schreider, Ed's brother, was my CIT, the head of the CITs, and he was my CIT director for 2 years. And he was the one that had the connection to penny candy. He was the one that got, and I'll tell you, when he got penny candy, because he had to get so much because of the fact that there were so many campers. Campers used to bring. There were I don't know if you know the Ferrucci's, but the Ferrucci's were two brothers that went to the camp. They used to bring $50 each to go into the penny candy store for $1, and they got bags of candy, which, by the way, they ate all night. And they didn't sleep all night, of course, because they were so wired on sugar. But that was the thing to do. The penny candy store, I'm talking filled to the roof, to the ceiling with penny candy. I've never seen anything like it in my life, and that was something that was one of the most popular on camp overnights. We had there was a hill. I don't know much of a hill now, but there was a hill right near the waterfront. It's actually on the waterfront, but there was a hill there. We used to put a slip and slide that went down the hill. Oh my God, the funnest thing in the whole world. The kids loved that overnight. And you know what? They loved it so much they came back and did it again. And they didn't mind, and the parents didn't mind paying for it because the kids were like, oh yeah, I gotta go back. So in other words, but we did have the other stuff. We did have the paw socks. You got to go to training camp. I never went because they must have stopped that after I came back, because I don't think I ever went. But the upper camp used to go off camp every Friday when I was a counselor in the upper camp. And we used to go off camp. We went everywhere. We went to a Paw Sox game. We went to Canopy Lake. We actually went all the way up to Maine, and we went to it's that amusement park on the beach. I can't remember what it's called now. But we did all these kinds of events. And again, it was revenue for the camp, and I get that. And it wasn't cheap to go there either. Not cheap to go there at all. But it was revenue for the camp. But these events were just so, these we call classic Rivers events.
Yeah.
Because they were so popular. They were so popular, and everybody loved them. The Ferrucci's staying up all night and eating penny candy. Us going out for us having Chinese food delivered to counselors, staying up all night and gabbing about God knows what. I do remember, and I don't believe I partook in this, but I believe that there was a couple of summers where I believe during overnights there were a couple counselors that got some beers and a keg and that kind of thing. And actually, there was one summer. Got to tell you this story. Now, the story is not confirmed. It's not confirmed. It's kind of a rumor, but I did hear through the grapevine, through somebody who went, that this was actually true. My brother also went to the camp too, and his friend Alec also. And a guy who went through the river system, he became a Weston policeman. So what he used to do was he used to come by the camp all the time, either during the day to see Mark Light, the director, or he came by to see Ed, or he came by to see whoever. He used to come by all the time in his car with his uniform on. If he was on, he used to come by all the time just to check on the camp. He had told Mark that he would watch the camp and make sure, because he loved the camp. He was a camper there, went all the way up to the same thing I did. He loved the camp.
Right.
So I was told there was one summer it was an overnight, and it was probably 10 o'clock at night. We got all the kids to sleep, and they slept in the gym, the old gym, at the upper camp, mostly the boys. Upper camp, middle, and lower boys pretty much had that. It became the girls' camp, locker room in the girls' camp later on. But the girls were in the quadrangle, just way away from where the boys were. So we got the boys to bed. They were finally sleeping. It was probably not even 10 o'clock at night. It was probably more like 11:30 at night. And we were hanging out in the gym area where the doors are. Now there's a road that goes back of the gym where we used to have pickup when it rained.
Yeah.
And so there were doors there. There's two sets of doors that were there, and you didn't keep the doors closed, the ball would go out there or whatever. It wasn't something that was driven a lot, but we did pick up there. And So we see this cop car, and he lights up his lights, and we go over to the cop car, and we were like, "Hey, what's up?" I can't remember the kid's name. I'm sorry. I will. I'll try to remember, but I can't remember. And we're like, "Hey, what's up? What's going on?" He said, "Yeah, I'm just checking things out." He turned his light off. He wanted to disturb the kids. And about 4 or 5 of us were out there, and all of a sudden he said, "Hey guys, guess what?" I was like, "What?" He said, "I got a keg in the back." I'm like, "What? You're a policeman? You got a keg in the back?" He's like, "Yeah, I got it in the back seat. I brought it for you guys." I'm like, "Oh, cool. That's awesome." So he drove down to an area in front of the art, where the art building was. Drove in front of there. He parked, and he kind of we hid the keg back there, and that's when we um, indulged a little bit. That's the only time I did that, though. But it was so cool. It was so cool. I mean, this is a Western policeman bringing a keg to the river state camp for the counselors. And again, this was way back when. This was a long time ago. This was when things were a little bit more free and a little bit more. Um, how do you say? Easygoing back then. So that's a huge story.
Wow.
And again, there was a rumor going around that it happened, but it did happen. I didn't see it. I was not there. So if I mentioned that I was there, I was not.
I was about to say, you just said you indulged in it, and
I
now
did, but I came after he came. That's that. I didn't
Oh.
know that he was the one who brought it. So I
Oh,
don't.
okay.
Yeah, I came after. I came way after. So
That
it
Doug
wasn't. It
just
wasn't me.
spinning a tale here of just making it
No,
seem
no, no,
like
not at
he.
all. No. I didn't mean to think that I was
No.
standing right
Okay.
there waiting. This is the story that I heard.
Yeah. No. By the way, I do. Speaking of clarifying stories, I do have to clarify because I just remembered, and I don't want somebody when we post this to call me out on it. We were actually. It was not that we went to Patriots training camp. It's that we were supposed to go. Literally, that day of, they canceled the session that we were supposed to go to. So we went bowling instead. So
Oh
we
man.
were supposed to go to Patriots training camp, but unfortunately it got canceled. Like literally the day of that we were supposed to go. So we went bowling to get buffet lunch instead. So kind of a nice consolation prize, but still would have been really nice to actually go to Patriots training camp.
We used to love those days. We used to love the days where we were
Oh
off
yeah.
camp because we spent so much time. Even as CITs, we got to be off camp, and it was so good because we worked really hard at CIT. So at least way back when, we worked really, really hard. So it was one of those things where to get off camp and to kind of hang out and not have to kind of be at camp and be on all the time, because you gotta be on.
Yeah.
Was really, really cool.
Definitely.
Be able to get off camp.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, those are some of my best memories were kind of like the trips we took and just the places we got to go. Like I said, George's Island, bowling, like all these different things. I'm sure there are others that I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was a good time. So I kind of do want to just bring it back a little bit to sort of
Sure.
the sports of Rivers during our time there,
Of
because there
course.
definitely were a lot of sports options. So I guess, I mean, Doug, is there sort of one? I know there's like, for me, there's kind of like one or two sports that kind of like I enjoyed probably more than the other ones we played. So I kind of want to ask you the same thing. Like, was one of the sports
Hello.
activities? Hello, yes,
Hello.
hello,
Speak, man. Speak.
brain going, or mouth going before brain. But was there was was there sort of one sport that you in particular enjoyed above all other sports, or sort of what sporting activity sort of stood out for you, or I mean, were there ones that sort of stood out above the others? So what was your sort of take on that?
It's so interesting because sports when I was growing up there, when I was a counselor, and even when I was a CIT and when I was a camper, sports there was very competitive, really super competitive. Now it went down over the years because nobody wanted to be really competitive and everybody wins kind of thing.
Also, you got
So
half the kids in the freaking group that don't even like really sports to begin with, so they're just sort of lazing around or whatnot, not really participating. I mean,
correct.
like even
We didn't. We didn't do that. We loved
no.
My groups. Yeah,
and there were some
we loved
like the more athletic groups. Like the funny thing is the more athletic groups were the most annoying, like just behavior wise. But when it came to like the games and stuff like that, like they got into it, and like that was the best. Those were some of the best groups to have for the sports related activities because like they got into it, and that's like you had like some of the most intense games, whereas some of these other
We
groups
used to.
just kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah, absolutely, Robbie. I totally agree. We used to have we used to play in the rain.
oh yeah
We used to play in thunderstorms. As long as there was no lightning out there, the thunderstorm was way far away.
yeah.
We used to play flag football, and we turned it into tackle. We actually used to play. Gotta hear this, man. We used to play ultimate frisbee, but we did tackle. Ultimate frisbee tackle. We used to play anything that we could make into a different kind of game. We did.
Tackle
Frisbee,
softball.
tackle, softball, whatever it was that was physical, we
Yeah.
absolutely did it. But
Right.
we were super competitive. Everybody who went to the camp knew that it was a sports-related camp. It was a sports camp. That's what it was. Across the way, across the pond, there's Camp Nonsuch, and Camp Nonsuch was in more theater and arts and arts and crafts, and I make a rocket and all this kind of stuff, which isn't a problem. It's just they were not the kind of kids that typically went to Rivers.
Yeah.
Kids that went to Rivers were kids that played sports.
Right.
I think, to go back to your question, when I think of sports there, I think of actually a few of them that come to mind quickly, and some that are kind of scattered out a little bit. I think some of the best stuff that I did there I'd say as a camper or even a counselor were probably, I would say, at least two things on the top, and then there's a couple of low ones. The two top ones was bombardment and G-ball.
Oh yeah.
Those are my two top ones. Now
G-ball is like, that was the great thing about G-ball is like that was unique to Rivers. Like I feel like anywhere else you went, like nobody knew.
They were like,
what the hell you were talking about.
What's G-ball? It's basically kickball, but you kick the crap out of everybody.
No, but exactly. That's basically the rules of G-ball are. Yes. It's like kickball in the sense that you kick the ball, but you just keep running around the bases. Correct. And you
could play it two different ways, but that's typically the way we play it.
You keep running around the bases until either the defense throws to the next base and they tag the base, or until you get hit by the ball. Now you can play it. I think the way you're thinking of is you only get to run around the base once, and then you have to stop if you get all the way around. But like we played it both ways. Like one where you had to stop.
We did too.
Yeah, we play like you
mostly you just keep running.
Yeah, exactly.
Until somebody pegs you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, and I keep saying in my day, in the old time, I would say old school. I'm going to say old school from now on. The old school way is that you'd never touch the ball. You always peg the person.
Yeah.
Didn't matter where the ball went, because we always went around. So, got a story about G-ball, and Robbie, you know this story, and you actually know the person. I'm not sure. You know of this person. This is a great G-ball story.
Oh,
So the G-ball story that I have is that this was done in the old gym. The old gym had this
balcony.
there was a
Yeah.
gym below, and then there was a balcony where kids could sit and watch if they wanted to, because there were bars.
Yeah.
So you could sit and watch. And typically groups came in and they watched it if they were going to lunch or whatever, they were changing or whatever it was.
Right.
So, and then there was, when you walked out, there was a whole bunch of plaques on the wall for Rivers School and stuff like that. These plaques were way up on the wall. They were up on a white wall, and you had to go by a post. There was a post right there, and the ball went either this way or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So in my group, I met a kid a while back. His name is Jamie Rice.
Oh yeah.
And Robbie, what does he do now?
He is the head men's ice hockey coach at Babson College.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Jamie Rice, he was a great athlete. I mean, 1,000 times better than me. Really, really great athlete. I think I heard him telling somebody that I think he lettered in probably 4 or 5 sports, maybe even more than that. I mean, he was a great athlete.
Oh yeah.
Jamie Rice was up to bat, so to speak, up to kick, and I was on his team, and let me tell you, I wouldn't believe this unless I saw it by myself, saw it for myself. And this is not a rumor. I was there. I saw this. He kicked the ball.
You told me this many times.
Yes. Yeah. He kicked the ball. He kicked the ball so hard, and so, like, I believe he kicked it with the inner side of his foot, almost like a soccer ball. So it went a little further, a little bit higher, but much longer and faster. So by the time we all looked up after he kicked it, it had hit one of the plaques and it disappeared. I was like, what just happened? He started running around the base, running around. I don't know who went up. I have no idea who went up to go get it. So they went up, the other team went up, and they have to climb a whole bunch of steps, get up to the top of the balcony so you could run outside. It turns out that it had gone, it had hit the plaque and gone about halfway onto the field.
Wow.
There. And let me tell you, he ran around like, I would say close to 50. It was about 12 times. Pretty fast runner too. But I'm just like, all around, we were just like cheering him on. He was actually walking at one point. I'm like, dude, what are you walking for? Don't walk. So it was unbelievable. It was so, and those are the kinds of things that like stick in your head. Those are the kinds of things that you remember. T-ball was very exciting because it was fast paced. You could peg somebody. You didn't want to hurt them. You weren't aiming for their head, but sometimes they ducked. Sometimes they ducked down, and you were trying to aim low, and you hit them up high by accident. Hit him in the head. It was no big deal. Guy went down. He didn't even cry. He got back up again. He was fine. Those were the exciting times. So definitely G-ball. Bombardment was absolutely huge. We used to play counselors versus CITs, counselors versus counselors. We had Jimmy Navoni, by the way, the guy that you mentioned before, that I've known since I was also 10. Jimmy Navoni had one of the hardest throws. His brother, Tommy, also was a counselor there. He also had a throw. But I'll tell you, there was one guy there that you did not want to get hit with at all. And you actually, there were some kids that actually went out of the game and knew that if they didn't get out of the game, they would be hit by this guy. His name was Charlie Slack. Charlie Slack was on the Harvard football team. He was the quarterback. He was a backup quarterback for Harvard at that time. And I'll tell you, he threw the ball so hard that you had a red welt on your leg. And you wanted it to be on your leg. You did not want to get hit in the head. You do not want to get hit in the chest. You want it right in the leg. And you like jumped so you could get it on the leg. The welt, the red welt was so painful. And so it lasted for hours. Hours. It was awesome. It was so awesome.
Battle scars, yeah.
Battle scars, huge battle scars. And I asked my mother too. I said, Mom, when you sent me to camp, were you nervous I was going to get hurt? She's like, no, it was camp. You got hurt, you got hurt. It's not a big deal. You know, if you, I didn't get seriously hurt ever there. But it was one of those things where my mom and dad didn't really care that much. They knew I was having fun. They knew I loved the camp. It was social. It was sports. I met you. I met a whole bunch of, George and the Schreiders and a whole bunch of
Larry Witt, like all the
Larry Witt. All these guys who've been at camp for such a long time. Jimmy Devoni, his son, who by the way was 4 years old when I started that camp. And he was your co-counselor in upper camp.
Me and Andrew,
so
yeah.
I saw Andrew grow up. I saw Andrew grow up at the camp. I mean, this is what camp was. It was all about fun. I don't care if I get hurt. I don't care what happens. And the parents didn't really care either. They were calm and cool and collected about everything because they knew that, number one, Mark and Paul and Ed later on always hired teachers, mostly. A lot of teachers were there. 98% of it was probably teachers that worked during the year. And that was a big push because we knew these people were smart and they had an education and they knew what to do and they could teach stuff. The other thing that they did was they hired quality people. They hired people that were going to be, helping out and making sure that everybody was safe. And that's the most important part of camp in the first place.
I mean, I feel like though there were some, at least sort of during my time, there were definitely some amount of people that they hired who were a little bit borderline. I feel like sometimes, especially towards the end, as much as I hate to say, sort of the hiring and the the people they allowed to come back maybe got a little bit lax with some kids being allowed back as CITs and as counselors.
I agree with that.
Maybe shouldn't have, or definitely wouldn't have, back, back sort of in the old school, my time, especially in Doug's time. But I remember, and I will never forget this story. We had a co-counselor of mine way back. I think I was still in high school. Yeah, so it's been over a decade. Yes, I am that old. But Doug's looking at me way back. Yes, all way back, as Doug just
all way back.
But they hired this guy. This guy was like off the wall. I mean, it was clear that he indulged in recreational
hibiscus.
How do I put this in a substance that is now legal in the state?
Dude, it's pot.
Yeah,
dude, pot.
Marijuana.
Marijuana.
I'm just gonna say it. Marijuana. Yeah, marijuana.
You can say it. It's okay.
Because you literally see him before the camp day started. We had a counselor parking lot, this like dirt parking lot over by the baseball field, and he and I would always park there every day, and I would always see him like before camp, literally smoking in his car. It was the most interesting thing. This guy was just like, again, he was just kind of off the walls, and he two stories about him. One is we had an upper boys basketball tournament, and obviously the upper boys staff were the coaches, and so he and I were coaching against each other, and he got upset at the co-counselor that was keeping the scoreboard, and apparently after the game he like went outside into the hallway with this guy with this co-counselor, actually grabbed him by the neck and like actually left a mark on his neck, and so they had to send him home for the day. And then sort of to top it all off, again, this is during like the second to last week of camp, so like we've already been dealing with.
Wait, I think I know this kid.
Putting it, I don't know. Well, you weren't back yet though when this kid was.
I wasn't. Okay.
No.
All right. Never mind, because there was another one that was there.
Yeah, I'm sure there were a few, but this
that
one
was doing that,
one,
and
this one was a one summer wonder.
Was found out and didn't was fired.
No, but the reason why this guy was fired was because he literally, and this is how stupid he was. He literally, without telling anybody, just walked over to his car, got in and left, like before the end of the camp day, without telling anybody. And Larry Witt, who was the upper boys camp head at the time, saw him, got in Mark Light's golf cart, and followed him to the parking lot, watched him get in his car and leave. And then basically,
I could so see Witt doing this too.
Yeah. Basically saw him leave, and so he literally, went back and told Mark, and the guy was fired right away. Yeah, so we obviously, that's. I wish we had baseball, like full on baseball, but unfortunately we had softball instead. But and the basketball was the great thing about basketball is that for especially the end few years it was run by George, and like it was just he really like took it so seriously, which was great because you had so many cool like games and memories, and like we had basketball tournaments that he would run and stuff like that, and so it was just a really cool experience, the George experience. And
well, the George experience wasn't just on the basketball court though.
Oh no,
the camp early, there was the discussions about Celtics and about what was going on and what was happening and what he thought of Kelly Olynyk and what he thought of all kinds of different Celtics and what their record would be. So we would have these unbelievable conversations.
Right.
Interesting.
And then he would have some very like intellectual and deep conversations with like other non-sports, a fanatic. I remember there was this one.
Here's a picture of George right there. It's my daughter and then Robbie on the other side, but that's
good old George. What was I gonna say? But I think just listening to George's sort of like non-sports related conversations, like there was this one counselor, this kid's name was Kip, and he and George used to have like these very intellectual conversations, and just they were hysterical to listen to. I mean, George was just quite the personality. We try to we're trying to see still if we could get him to come on at some point, but he's kind of MIA at the moment. But George,
I'm still hoping. I'm still searching. I'm hoping that he can.
George, if you're out there listening, we'd love to have you on.
Oh my gosh, we would love to do that. That'd be awesome. That'd be awesome because he was there. I think he was there even before I was.
I mean, he was my counselor. And that was the great thing about it.
He was there before I was, but I don't know if he took a little time in between because I don't remember him as a camper.
No, he started Rivers when I was a camper.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he started Rivers when I was a camper because like one of his first years as a counselor was when I had him for upper boys.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense then.
And that's one of my greatest memories actually at Rivers was on the last day of camp every summer, the boys' camp had a tradition where counselors would give their staff shirts off their backs to like a deserving camper, so to speak.
As you saw in that picture, by the way,
Yeah.
that was the last day of camp. I gave my shirt to my daughter.
Yeah. And so George gave me his shirt one summer, which I thought was really, really, really cool and special. And the thing about George's shirts that Doug knows is George would always cut the sleeves off the shirts. So like he always went sleeveless. Even you have to understand that our Rivers staff shirts evolved from these like red like collared shirts to one summer of yellow short sleeve shirts to then a red short sleeve shirts. Yeah, sleeveless in Seattle. You spelled sleeveless wrong. Um, Doug can't spell.
I was typing fast. Probably. Give me a break.
Yeah, I can't speak and Doug can't spell, so it cancels out.
Great combination, right?
Yeah, exactly. Except that you can't see his bad spelling. But
Thank
anyway,
goodness for that.
Yeah. But yeah, it was. I mean, that was just truly a cool moment, because George never really gave his shirt out to like hardly anybody. He only gave it out to like a
He
few
doesn't.
kids during my time that I was there. So to be able to
the time that I've known George, I asked George why doesn't he give a shirt to anybody. He said I don't do that because he never wanted to play favorites with anybody. And he felt that if he took his shirt, first of all, he had a lack of shirts anyway. He really didn't want to do it because he was going to use it for the next summer anyway.
Yeah.
That was the first thing. The second thing is that he just didn't want to play favorites with anybody. He didn't want to upset anybody else. So he said, I just don't do it. It's just not something I do. So you should feel pretty special that he took his shirt off for you.
I know. I mean, it's one of my most treasured memories from that camp was, here's George, this 6'5" basketball guy, giving me the shirt off his back, And actually, the thing about George and I is that my first year as counselor, we actually co-ran a swim group together. So like that was something.
He told me he couldn't stand swim.
He really couldn't. He literally he would always stay in the pen. Would never take his shirt off, right? Thing like that. Literally going up to his ankles, if that.
Didn't like it. Did not like it.
No, he could not stand the waterfront. That's like the running joke after we get the basketball. Because anytime we'd see George roaming around by the waterfront,
I constantly saw him at the waterfront when I was at boating. He would come down and visit us. I said, "Hey George, you want to take a canoe out?" He's like, "No, I don't take canoes out. I don't do boating." I'm like, "Okay, sorry, man. How about a sailboat?" He's like, "No, I don't want to take a sailboat out." So when I was teaching swimming, he came down a couple times. I was like, "Hey, what's up? Come on and join my group." He's like, been there, done that. Don't want to do
that. Yeah.
He never wanted to really get near the water.
George was a character, and that's why we all loved him, because that he did what he did, and there was no stopping him, and it was great. That's what made him a legend at Rivers Day Camp. And
that's correct.
And I do, speaking of legends at Rivers Day Camp, I do have to bring up, and Doug obviously will know this guy quite well when I say the name, Russ Halloran. Russ is a Rivers Camp and school legend. Yeah, Russ is a Rivers Camp and school legend. He's a guy who was continuing to be a counselor.
How you doing?
Into
he came off the bus. That's what he would say all the time.
Into his age, it's like, you're the best.
You're the best.
All that. He was in his 80s and still, counseling. And the thing about Russ, sort of the sports connections, he actually pitched in the minor leagues for the Boston Red Sox organization. And also, again, another sports tie with him is that if you go to Newton, there is actually a field complex named after him in the city of Newton, because he was their recreation director there for I think like 30-something odd years.
Yep.
And they named on Albemarle Road in Newton, if you go down there, there's a big sign outside the complex. It's the Russell J. Halloran complex, and anytime I drive by there and see it, I'm like, I know that guy.
Every time I would speak to him, I would ask him to tell me a story. Let me tell you, he came up to me with a joke
Oh,
or a story all the time. His stories were awesome
oh yeah,
because they weren't just about the
oh yeah.
camp. They were about, I asked him to one day because he was just kind of sitting and watching some kids. And I know, we could sit and watch kids and it's not a big deal. But I did ask him one day, I said, so what was it like to be in the minor league? He said he just started telling me story after story after story. He used to say, "Well, there was a couple of guys that I knew the way they hit because they kept their hands in a certain way." And he would talk to me about these guys that were playing with him, and I was like, "Holy crap!"
Well, he and George used to have. Speaking of him and George, two legends together, they would always have these like conversations, like exchange stories about these guys from like these athletes from the city of Boston, like the 50s and 60s or whatever,
Right,
the
right, right. And we were
70s,
like,
whatever you
"What?
want
What
to
is he
call it. We're like,
talking about?"
who are you talking about? Like
We had no
these
idea.
names. Like
We
who
had
is
no
this
clue.
guy? Like who is this guy that played for like, Burke High School in 1963? Yeah,
Well, that was also very typical of George is that he would say, "Oh yeah, like Danny Ainge, when he played, he was like Bo Johnson from 19 the league I was in 1974." When we played East Boston, it was a guy named Joe Johnson of O Johnson. He was awesome. He was 6'4". He was this. He was that. He could dunk over anybody. He reminded me of Dr. J. I was like, oh my, what is he talking about? I have no idea what this guy.
yeah. Where are we going?
But these were the George stories, though. They were George stories.
Yeah,
These were the George stories.
it was great. It was great. Some of the tales that he would spend from back in his playing and coaching days and stuff like that. The best story that George, well, not the best story, but one of the stories that stood out the most that George told me was actually he was coaching, I guess, for one of the high schools in Boston. I think it was, it was Hyde Park High School, and Kelly Olynyk. He coached Kelly Olynyk actually.
Nice guy, Kelly Olynyk.
Yeah.
Who we hated.
Yeah. Oh,
probably still does.
Probably gets it. If we ever have him on, we gotta ask him about Kelly Olynyk. What his
We
thoughts
got to
are.
ask him about Kelly. What his thoughts are.
But apparently he was coaching a game in, I guess they were playing at some tournament at Holliston or Natick, one of those towns. And the referee, like, he didn't like the way the referee was calling the game. And so he was like arguing with them. And the referee made like some comment about George like standing on his sneakers or something like that, or like, you know, like made some kind of George standing on his sneakers, and then like proceeded to tell George how old he was, and George was like, "Man, I'm older than you. What's wrong with you?" Because I guess this guy was like in kind of rough shape, even though he was a basketball official. And George got teed up by the guy in the game. It was like, we always got a chuckle over George telling that story, which is a bit more recent. Yeah, Georgia.
Yo, man, what's
George
up,
and Russ.
man?
How you doing? How are you? Yeah, just some of the
You
classic.
doing, man?
It's kind of like
What's up?
Russ had his classic lines, and George had his classic lines. And they would always like just kind of rib each other, like sort of playfully rib each other. It was the funniest thing to watch, like George versus Russ. It was like a comedy show. It was like a 2-minute comedy hour. It was
Absolutely.
the best. It was the best. Like,
Well,
you're the
speaking
best.
of, yeah, you're the best. Speaking of legends, there's a few legends that we haven't mentioned yet.
Oh yeah.
One of them
We
I know
were
you
getting
know.
there. We were gonna get there.
I know. I'm just trying to, I'm just,
speed things up.
What's happening is you're telling me stories and then things are coming to my head, so that's why I'm talking about it. One of them you definitely know. The other I don't think you do know at all.
Okay.
So I'll talk about the one you don't know. Because why not? His name was Jimmy. Jimmy taught trap.
Okay.
Jimmy taught me trap. I did track in high school, but he wasn't at my high school. He was at another school, and he taught. He was a track coach, and Jimmy was very, very cool. Very cool guy. Um, he kind of talk in a raspy voice like
Oh yeah,
this.
no, I know that because he was teaching shop when I
Yeah, he teaches
started.
shop. Yeah,
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 when I started
yeah,
in
Doug.
yeah, so yeah,
Yeah,
I know
Doug.
exactly who you're talking about.
How you doing, Doug? What's happening, Doug? How you doing? He was just amazing. He wasn't a young guy either,
Oh no.
but I used to. He was definitely legendary
Oh
because
yeah.
he did that, and then he taught shop for a while. But I remember my last year there. I said was he was out in the field. The last year that he did track,
Okay.
I was out in the field and he was doing 40s, going 40-yard dash.
Yeah.
And I'm not I was a young chicken at the time. Yeah, I wasn't. I wasn't a kid. I was a young whatever at the
I didn't
time.
realize that
A
you
goose.
transitioned from an animal to a
I
person.
did. I did. And that's why I was that's why I wasn't running that fast. Hashtag young chicken. Excellent. So what happened was I yelled over to Jimmy. I said, "Hey Jimmy, what do you think I can get in the 40 now?" He's like, "Doug, man, you're an old man. You don't run the 40 no more. You're too old for that." I said, "Jimmy, I'm running it. You're gonna time me, right?" He's like, I'll time you, Doug. I'll time you. I also have the oxygen over here for you too." I'm like, "Thanks, Jimmy." So he started me up, and I don't know what it was, but for some reason, before I started, this crowd started to develop on the field because they were in between activities. So this crowd started to develop, and I'm like, "Oh no, Jimmy, why couldn't we have gone like 3 minutes earlier? I do not want to run and pull a hammy while I'm running down the field to the 40-yard dash." Unbelievable. I took off like a shot, and he timed me. And all of a sudden he clicks the thing. I run across. I'm huffing and puffing. I'm like, and he turns to me like this. He was like, What did you just do, man? Wow, you still got some wheels." He was just the coolest cat in the camp.
Yeah.
Cat in the camp. He was awesome. Awesome. That was the first legend. The other legend was down at the waterfront. Sandy.
Yes. Of course. How can you forget
San,
Sandy?
exactly. Sandy down at the waterfront. I'll tell you, this lady did not take any crap. We had this thing back in the old days and back in the old school. Old school was that you went in the water no matter what. Unless there was a tornado, and I think we actually did go in the water during a tornado watch because it was fine, but it was a tornado watch. We went in the water all the time, and Sandy said, "You need to go in the water. Doesn't matter. You need to go in the water. I don't care if it's cold." And by the way, the water did turn kind of chilly toward August. It got a little chilly on chilly days, rainy days
Ugh.
that weren't warm.
Oh yeah.
We still had to go in the water. Didn't matter.
That
We
was
had to
brutal,
go in the
especially
water.
getting out of the water afterwards.
Getting out of the water was worse because the water
Yeah.
was typically warmer than the air on chilly days. And again, it wasn't chilly all the time. It was just toward the end of camp. Typically, it got a little chilly. Sometimes during those days in which it was overcast and stuff like that. So, but Sandy, I'll tell you, she did not take any crap from anybody. She was a tough lady. Um, she made sure that her staff was doing the right thing. And again, if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen down in the water. And she just she must have liked me a little bit because she always gave me whatever group I wanted. And if I wanted to stay in the pens, she was like, yeah, you can stay in the pens. I think I taught an advanced group in the pens. They could like go underwater and
Doug's level
all
6
this kind of
group
stuff.
at the
Level
time.
6
Yeah.
group. I was in the pens, the deep pens. I used to call it the deep pens at the time. But that's Sandy just didn't take any crap from anybody, and I liked her because she was tough. She was a teacher at a school, and she was a tough lady, and I liked her because even the young young counselors that just became counselors, they were CITs the summer before. They would say, "Oh, Sandy, I don't want to go in the water," and she would like get in the water. Cut the crap. So the third legend I want to talk about, and this is an incredible story, but this is so who this guy is Mark Light. Mark Light took over the camp from his dad, Paul. He used to ride around the cart. And Mark was in the military. He was special forces in the military. And when I was a CIT, my CIT, I had two head of CITs. One was Jim, and the other was, oh my goodness, I cannot believe I just forgot his name. Anyway, what happened was that this guy was in Vietnam, and he used to teach us how to. We used to go in the woods and get on our all hands and knees. We used to put mud on our faces. We used to go in the woods and do all kinds of drills and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we worked hard as CITs. He was crazy, but it's good guy. And so what happened is that he taught us where Mark used to hide to watch the camp. So Mark used to walk around, okay?
Oh, yeah.
To look at the waterfront, instead of standing right in front of the waterfront so everybody could see him, he used to go into a little patch of woods, climb up a tree about halfway up, and watch the waterfront. Watch the people over here. Then he would go over here. So he used to kind of teach us where Mark hid out. So we would be aware. We would always be on as a counselor or CIT. So we're down. My brother actually went to the camp too, and he was one of the counselors at the waterfront one time, and we were down there. We were down there together, and then my brother Josh left to go to lunch or something like that. And I was standing there for a couple minutes, and all of a sudden we see this boat come over for Nunsuch. It was the motorboat over for Nunsuch and docked at our dock. I'm standing there with Mark. And as this motorboat's coming toward us, Mark turns to me and says, "Wait a minute. Is that boat coming here?" I said, "I don't know. So they get off. They dock at the dock. Mark starts to walk toward them. Mark says, "What are you guys doing here?" They said, "Oh, we're from Camp Nonsuch. We're coming to just see some people, some friends of ours."
Oh boy.
And
big
yeah,
mistake. Big mistake.
See, you already got it, Robbie. You already got
Big
the
mistake.
premise
Big
of what's
mistake.
coming next.
Oh yeah. I actually have a story Mark told us, which I'll tell after you're done with this one.
What's coming next is the fact that Mark looks straight in their faces and says, "No, you're not." And they said, "Hey, I don't see what the problem is. We're just coming over to see some friends. We're going to stay for a little bit, and then we're going to go back." Mark says, "You're going to go back now." And then they brought it up again. They were they weren't standing real close to each other, but they were kind of forceful in the way they were talking. But Mark was like, "No, I'm not having it." So they did this about 4 times, back and forth. And then Mark finally says, he takes out his walkie-talkie, because we had walkie-talkie. The upper staff had that. And walkie-talkie said, "You see this walkie-talkie? All I have to do is make one phone call, and I can have 200 counselors here in about 3.5 seconds. So you decide what you're going to do. either get back in your boat and get your asses back to Nonesuch, or I'm on this walkie-talkie and we're going to force you back in your boat and we'll take you to Nonesuch. And that's it. You decide what you want to do. And I stood there. I was shaking. I was like, holy crap, what the hell is he saying? Let me tell you how fast they got in their boat. They got in the motorboat and they went back. That's the kind of guy that he was.
Yeah.
Very protective of the camp. Even if Rivers owned that camp, it didn't matter, and we did. He was very, 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 very extremely protective of the camp.
Yeah.
And protective of the people in the camp.
Oh yeah.
But he knew that if he called, we would be there in a heartbeat, backing him up if he needed to.
Definitely. And the story that he told us was, I guess, one day there was like a guy walking his dog or something like that through campus, and Mark approached him and said, oh, sorry sir, camp's going on, you're gonna have to come back later when camp's over. And the guy's like, oh no man, it's all good, I'm friends with Mark Light, as he's talking to Mark Light. I'm friends with Mark Light, we're cool, it's all good. So,
bad mistake.
Mark kind of in his own sort of sarcastic way or whatever, sort of his own. So, okay, that's all good. So he sort of feigns like he's turning around and walking away. All of a sudden he turns back and walks back over and says, oh, excuse me, and he takes out his wallet and like takes out his driver's license from his wallet and shows the guy, like, can you just tell me what that says? And the guy looks at us like, oh, you're Mark Light. I was like, yeah, now get off of campus. Hightailed it out of there. But you're right, that's the kind of guy. Mark was a good guy. Like, he and I would like have, chats about the Red Sox and stuff like that. But he could be very tough when he needed to be. He was a tough guy. He was a fair guy, a good guy, but he definitely, you did not want to get on his bad side, on his shit list. Like,
oh no.
He was, you were asking for some real problems if you crossed Mark Light. There's no question.
And let me tell you, to get on his good side, it wasn't that difficult. All you had to do is do what you're asked to do.
Yeah.
It was that simple. Old school. He's an old school camp guy. He was actually for many, 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 many years, he was the director of the National Camp Association.
Wow.
So for many years he was the director or the president, or very high up in that kind of.
Hi, Mr.
situation. President? Yeah, you believe me, you wanted to know. You always wanted to know where Mark was, but you were always on. Hashtag Mr. President. You were always on when he was there because you knew he was walking around.
Right.
I knew where he hid out. So when I was on the waterfront, I always watched my kids. I was counting my kids. I'm always making sure that I'm doing the right thing. And that's what we were taught to do. That's old school. That's old school big time. But if you screwed up, number one, he would tell you screwed up. And if you screwed up real bad, you're gone. He didn't spend more than 2 seconds saying that you're gone. And he backed it up.
Campers and counselors.
Campers and counselors, because let me tell you, it got soft. Later on, toward the end of when the camp ended. It got soft enough where there were kids that were doing things that weren't supposed to be doing. There were counselors and CITs are doing what some were not doing what they were supposed to be doing, even when I was there, and nothing was done. There may have been, oh, you're suspended for a couple of days. No. If you did something really, really bad, if you were smoking pot, you were smoking on camp, whatever, you were gone. He said, and they used to say, Paul and Mark together used to say, guess what? I got applications in my office. I got plenty of people that want to be here. You don't want to be here? Fine, take off. You got plenty of people. I can replace you in a heartbeat. And that's the way they were, and they were tough in that way. But if you were honest, you were hardworking, you did your job. Hashtag Bill Belichick. There he goes. Got to do it. Let's see if he does it, folks. There it is. Hashtag do your job. If you just did what you were supposed to do, and you respected authority. You respected what Mark was doing, because all he was doing is keeping the camp safe and making sure that everybody was okay. And if he asked you to do something, you did it without question. You're in. He asked me to do a whole bunch of stuff because he knew he could rely on me. He asked my brother Josh to do a whole bunch of stuff too. Alec too. So my brother's friend. All this stuff. As long as you did the stuff, they could rely on you, and they knew that you were okay and that you weren't going to screw them.
Yeah.
If you screwed them, they screwed you.
Oh yeah.
That's old school. Yeah. That's total old school right there.
Oh yeah. No, they both definitely were not to be messed with.
Paul even more.
Yeah. Oh
Paul
yeah.
even more, because he's the one that started the camp.
Yeah.
So Paul even more than his son Mark. Paul may have, if he liked you even a little bit, he may have given you a chance, but typically you were gone. You didn't mess around like that back then. You just didn't mess around like that at all, because you knew what the consequences were. You knew you had to go to Paul's office. You didn't want to go to Paul's office. You didn't want to go see Mark. You didn't want to go see Mark because it was freaking scary. You know that Mark and Paul, they interviewed me when I was 10. Did you get an interview to go to camp? They interviewed
I don't recall being interviewed
Yeah. My mother and me were sitting in the office. It was probably the Red Building, because the Red Building never disappears. It was probably the Red Building, but it was a camp office, and I don't remember being there, but my mother said, yeah, he interviewed us. I was like, oh my God, they interview for camp? This is how they scrutinized. This is how they made sure that they had the right people. Right kids, the right people. That's what they did. I mean, that's just the way it was. Old school.
Yeah, absolutely. Hashtag old school.
Hashtag, yeah.
So, obviously, we could go for 4 and 5 hours about Rivers memories and legends and stuff like that. But
we're going to do Rivers Part 2.
Oh, we definitely are.
We're going to do Rivers Part 2.
3, 4, 5, 6, yeah.
Whatever we have to do to get it all done, because I have so many stories and they're so
But
cool.
there is one more camper that we have to bring up before we
we definitely have to bring him up. Wait,
Yeah.
let me get a picture. I get a picture of it. We have to bring him up.
The last couple of summers at Rivers, they had a exchange program where children from China came to Rivers Camp and actually spent. I don't know if I can actually see that.
You can't see it?
Oh, now you can kind of make out. Oh, there you go.
How's that?
That's better. There you go. So kids from China actually came and spent I think it was 2 or 3 weeks at camp with us, actually going in the groups, doing the activities and, sort of living the full camp day. And one of those kids, the first year they did this, was named Charles. And Charles, I'll tell you, Charles was a legend from day one. I'll tell you. I mean, the kid
was awesome.
He barely spoke English, but just some of his mannerisms and just some of he had us fits and giggles from day one, man. I'll tell you. And the one thing about Charles is, for some reason, he became obsessed with saying my name. Doug and other people got him just hooked on saying my name in this really weird way. And
really high voice. Really high voice.
Hold on. I'm gonna throw it to Doug here for a second, because Doug has a little video clip that I'd like him to play. Right now.
All right, let me. I have it all set, all ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually in the new cafeteria that we had.
The new caf at lunch.
At lunch.
This is Charles.
This is Chaz.
Chaz and his glory.
In his glory, and it was just so funny the way he did this. Everybody loved this. I'm gonna put it right up. See, this is see him.
Oh yeah.
Okay, Okay, so that's Chaz,
Yeah.
and you see the plate and everything, and that's
Uh,
the
yeah.
and
Yep.
I'm gonna hit it right here. See if you can hear it.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Wait, I'm gonna hit it. It goes again. Wait, let's see.
Well, and the best, like sort of the add-on to that was he started sort of doing in like the sort of his own unique way, which is Robbie Johnson, and just he had me dying every single time. And so they left like the second to last week of camp. And we actually have a picture. You already showed the picture of me, George, you, and him. But so he leaves, and so
Show it again.
yeah. There we are in all our glory. So fast forward to the annual staff appreciation dinner that they hold the second to last night of camp, and so we're sitting there, we're chatting, and Ed Schreider gets up to give his sort of annual end of the summer speech, and during that speech, he's talking about the China group that came and talking about these kids. He starts talking about Charles, and we're of course already kind of laughing and sickering because it's like, yep, Charles, good old Charles. And so Ed proceeds to tell everybody how the last day that they were there, I guess Ed, was thanking him for coming and, talking to him a little bit. And I guess Charles said to him that when he got back to China, that he wanted to change his name. And Ed asked him what he wanted to change it to, and he said, Robbie Johnson. And I just burst out laughing. And everybody burst out laughing at the dinner. It was the most classic thing. Because that kid.
He also said that he wanted you to be the emperor of China.
I mean, I wouldn't mind that. I mean, hey,
that's what he said.
I'll go be the president of China. I'll go to Beijing.
That's what he said, man. I'm just telling you.
But no, that kid, maybe someday I'll run into that kid again.
I'm just telling you, there are kids. There are kids that you remember.
Yeah.
That were like really super great kids. And then there are kids that you're like, oh my God, I never want to see them again ever in my life.
Oh yeah, I got a few of those too. Yeah.
But I'll tell you, Chaz was one of those guys that was a really hot day, and he went to the tennis court, and I was doing tennis. He'd be like laying on the benches, and I would go up to him and say, Chaz, Chaz, grab a racket and come out, and I'll even hit some with you. He's like, okay. And he would come out and he would saunter out and he would grab a racket. I'll tell you, I taught that kid 6 times how to hit the ball. And he did pretty well until he was on his own. And then once he was on his own, he just could not hit the ball. And then he got so upset, he still had a smile on his face. He put down his racket really gently. He walked over to the bench and started laying down on the bench again. I said, Chaz, don't you want to hit the ball more? He's like, too hot. And I'm like, oh man, come on. It's really not that hard.
He literally at basketball, my other Chaz story is at basketball once. You know how George, got with his basketball. That was his sacred ground. You did not mess with.
He runs the boys, basketball. Man.
You did not mess with George's basketball.
Man, those boys.
And Chaz, one game, he's on the bench during this particular moment in the game, and all of a sudden you just see Chaz sort of just running back and forth across the court, making ghost noises. So George stops the game and gave him a technical, and it was the funniest thing.
Wait a minute, I was there. He gave him a few technicals.
I think I'm sure you were there. Yeah, he kept running across making ghost noises. It was the funniest thing ever.
Actually, after the game, I was standing with George and I had the basketball. I was trying to think of whether that was a tournament or not, because I was trying to think of whether I was.
I don't think it was. I think
the ref.
I think you were just helping ref.
Oh, I was just helping ref. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, by the way, George and I were standing there. George looked at me, and in the face of the century, he looked at me and he was like this. And then he started laughing. He started giggling. And I was like, who the heck is that kid? he thought he was a riot.
Oh, it
He
was
thought he
great.
was a riot.
Yeah.
But he knew that, George was old school. George was like, when you're on my court, you do, if I tell you to do the calisthenics, you're doing calisthenics, and then we're gonna stretch out, and then we're gonna play a little bit. But he didn't take any crap either. But oh my God, he was so funny because he loved Chad.
Oh yeah.
And he pushed him. He pushed him too because he knew he was like, I'm gonna push him. I'm gonna see what he does, what he can do. So Chaz is one of those kids who he just like, oh, I want to see him again. I want to see what he looks like. I want to see what he's like.
Oh yeah. I wish I would run into him again someday. But yeah, he was something else. He was something else, and
Absolutely,
definitely good for quite a number of laughs and memories during his time
huge
at
laughs.
Rivers. So like Doug said, we're gonna start. I mean, we're gonna kind of start to wind down this episode. Obviously, we're gonna have several more Rivers episodes. Now that we've done one, I feel like we have to do like a few more just to get so many more.
Well, I think we have to talk about some of the other sports too that
Yeah.
were in Rivers because we didn't touch upon some of the maybe non-traditional sports.
That's why we're definitely having a part
more
2,
stories.
part 3, and then all.
Yeah.
Of that. So
absolutely, we'll try to see if we can get some special guests on too. Some people that have gone to Rivers that may want to talk about it.
We got some connection. I got some connections that I can tap into, see if they'd be interested. So we'll
absolutely,
see
it'd be great.
But we are gonna sort of
maybe a track coach.
Oh yeah,
starts with an S.
Oh yeah, and a certain somebody that you mentioned that knowing since he was 4 years old as well.
Ah yes, love to have him on. That'd be great.
Yeah, so
that'd be awesome.
It was. We will definitely work on those as we go along here.
And again, there's a ton of stories too. We have tons of stories with the sports, archery, fishing, all kinds of other sports and other activities. Even Robbie went to art.
Yeah.
Even Robbie went to art.
Robbie went to shop. Yeah.
We went to shop and art. And let me tell you, there's stories there too. So
we could spend a whole day straight just talking about Rivers.
Absolutely, and that's why we have to do more and more episodes.
Oh, we will.
We will in the coming days. We'll do more and more.
Definitely. But we are going to move on now to our final thoughts, and I will let Doug kick things off here with his final thought. Doug, what was your final thought for the week, or for the episode, I should say?
I don't know. No, I do know. I'm just kidding. Very interestingly enough, something came. I got a notification on my phone. It is sports related, so that's good.
Okay.
And got a notification on my phone, and I was super happy about it. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome!" And has had nothing to do with the team starting up again, but it does have to do with the fact that EA Sports has signed a 6-year agreement with Madden.
Oh wow!
To do Madden for the next 6 years.
Wow!
Officially. So I am so excited because that's awesome. One of my favorite games.
Yeah.
And for the next at least 6 years, they're gonna continue to do the EA Sports Madden sports game, which I'm very excited about.
Nice.
It's little sports, little video game.
Perfect during a pandemic. It's perfect.
Oh, of course.
Stuck at home. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because there's nothing else to do. Like totally valid. Like, I used to go to Ripper.
I was about to say, when did you turn into a 13-year-old girl all of a sudden?
I don't really know. I don't. But I used to go to Rivers, and I never did anything because I just thought it was stupid. But I hung out with my friends.
Well, that's yeah. I mean, for all the video game and Madden fans out there, I mean, that's got to be
It's huge.
beautiful, beautiful.
Absolutely huge for people who love Madden. And let me tell you, they do the Madden tournament. They just had a Madden tournament a
Yeah.
little while ago.
Oh, yeah. They've had a
So,
couple of tournaments for the various pro
yes.
athletes
Yep.
during this time.
Yep.
So my final thought has to do with something else that came out today, and that was the fact that, unfortunately, due to the current circumstances in the
Oh no! Don't
pandemic,
even say it. Don't even say it.
the Boston Marathon has been canceled
You said it.
officially. I did. Uh, the Boston Marathon has been canceled officially. It was so for those of you who don't know, which if I don't know why you're listening to this if you didn't know. Uh,
If you've let's see, if you
listen,
just came out of the Rock,
go back.
just
Go
came.
back.
No,
Go
no,
back.
you don't have to go back. I'm just saying that if you've been in a Rock for over 100 years, over 126 years, we have a marathon now in Boston.
But for the first time, actually, I think in the history of the marathon, it has been completely canceled. It was supposed to be in April. They postponed it to September, but they basically just decided, and I think rightfully so, unfortunately, that it just is not going to be practical to run it in the year 2020. So while
At
it's
least in the
sad,
traditional sense.
yeah. So they are going to be doing it sort of in a virtual sense, where people can run it run it, it can run the 26.2 miles, on their own and still get credit or, sort of something like that. So, but, I mean, it's sad, I mean, it's a Boston tradition. And, obviously, I think they made the right decision. I don't think I don't think there's a lot
I
of
just ran it,
people.
Robbie.
Wow, brave man. But in all seriousness, I don't think there's a lot of people that could necessarily disagree with the decision that they made, given what's going on. But at the same time, it's sad. That's not going to be
I have
run
only
this
one
year.
little disagreement. One little
Okay.
disagreement on
Okay.
the flip side of it, and again, it has nothing toward you. It's on the flip side of things,
Yeah.
which is Boston is going to be losing $200 million
I
in
know.
revenue,
I know.
and the restaurants and cafes and everything that's down there that brings these millions and millions of people are not going to have that revenue. And that's kind of sad because
Yeah.
there's now 40 million people out of work. So it gets to a point where, I thought it would be a great idea to be able to open up with the marathon, because we're starting to slowly open things up a little bit. It would be great to open up with a marathon and say, hey, guess what? Boston's strong. We're back. But I understand.
Yeah.
Totally understand. I'm not
Yeah.
against either way. I'm just, giving the counterpoint.
I completely understand, and it is very sad and disappointing, but understandable as well. So, on to the 2021 marathon, which will hopefully be back in bigger. Yes, hashtag point counterpoint, which will hopefully in the marathon, which will hopefully be back and better than ever come April of 2021. Doug's actually going to run it in 2021 slow motion.
Oh, right.
Slow motion. He's going to run it.
I'm going to run it in slow motion. It's going to take me 26 years.
Doug will still be running it in 2022 at least.
2022, like 2026.
Yeah, but
I'll be seeing all those people crawling under a rock.
Exactly. All right, so we're gonna sort of wrap up here with episode number 40. Again, episode 40 of the Sports Blitz. It's been a lot of fun reminiscing about Rivers memories and Rivers sports memories.
Awesome. I want to go tomorrow. Let's go tomorrow. Let's go. Let's open up the camp again, Robbie. You and I, directors.
Can't wait for future installments and even more memories and stories and all that fun stuff.
Tons of stories. Oh,
Now,
tons of
now
stories.
obviously, looking ahead to next episode, we will start to get back into sort of the more sports talk. Obviously, there's talking about the NHL coming back, baseball, what's going to happen there, NBA.
Baseball's done. That's my thing. Baseball's done.
We shall see. I don't necessarily disagree
Prediction.
with you there.
Hashtag
Hot
baseball's
take,
done.
hot take, hashtag hot take.
Hashtag hot take. Hot take. Hot take.
But anyway, we'll definitely be back with all that good stuff.
You're a very quick
on
typer.
episode number 41. Thank you.
It's not episode. Oh, episode number 41 is next.
41,
I thought you
yeah.
said this was 41.
Yeah, no, I said we'll be
41
back,
is next. This
we'll
was
be
40,
back
and
with-
39 was the one we just did.
I literally, my comment was, we'll be back with that stuff on episode 41. So
Okay.
you
Well,
need
we
to,
will
you
have
need-
41, but
You
we
need
had
to
40
you
now.
Need to,
Okay.
you need to listen better.
What?
Yeah, exactly. Hashtag listening.
Hashtag I'm not listening.
Yeah, exactly. Listening, not listening. Anyway.
Hashtag marathon.
Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for episode 40 of the Sports Blitz. As always, for Doug, I'm Robbie, and
For me? What's the matter? I can't say goodbye myself?
you usually do anyway, so it doesn't.
I know, I
matter.
do.
Yeah, but we will catch you guys next time here on the Sports Blitz. See ya.
See ya.